nominate Sharon to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court. I submit the nomination to the Vice and consider the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm closing the nominee presently previously consider Charles D. Vice of the Honorable Kenneth Desmond Jr. So we're going to start with those. Let me just ask, would you like to identify the people that are here today?
Yes, Councilor Jubenbo, thank you very much. I would like to introduce and thank all of my family and friends that are here this afternoon. Thank you. So my husband, Michael Donatelli, Barbara Savage, lifelong friend Lisa Smith, the Honorable Jeffrey Locke, Jean Phillips from my office, Jeremy Kuzman from my office, Kristen Cipolo, also from my office, Jessa Lumba from my office, Catherine Ham, formerly of Plymouth County, now with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, the Honorable Harold Naughton, State Representative, Kim West, formerly of the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office, now with the Attorney General's Office, Chief Justice Fabricant, thank you for being here, Brian Doherty, my sister Kate Witham, Defense Counsel and good friend Liam Scully, dear high school friend Judy Farnioli, my friend Ellen Davis, a lifelong friend, and her son Westerman Davis, which I'm happy to say is a newly minted attorney, was just sworn into the bar yesterday.
Okay, thank you. So we have two witnesses and a special guest witness call on first. If I could just take them out of order, but the reason we have two is I asked the nominee to bring in just two witnesses, and it was short notice last week, so we limited it to two witnesses. So we're going to have the Honorable Hank Naughton, the representative from the great town of Clinton, Mass.
Thank you, Councilman.
Who's a famous politician from Clinton, Mass?
David I. Walsh, first Irish Catholic governor, Senate governor. He was in my seat as a rep, United States Senator, chairman of the Senate Naval Affairs Committee during World War II. That was back when the town of Clinton had a lot of juice.
Well,
now all they have is me.
There's a statue over there.
There's a statue? There is no statue in the town of Clinton of David I. Walsh. There is a statue looking directly at the hat shop. If you're Keith Lockhart on the 4th of July, you're looking, if there weren't 10,000 people in front of you, at David I. Walsh. And then there is a picture of him on the second floor as you come off the second floor elevator on this side of the building.
So I did speak to the selectmen, and we reserved a patch in the center of the town for your statue.
Well, we can give that to Senator Walsh. I appreciate that, Councilor. It's always a pleasure to come into this hallowed and honored chamber. Again, Representative Hank Naughton, 12th Worcester District, and Chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. Whenever I heard that my law school classmate, Sharon Donatelli, was being nominated for the Superior Court bench, I couldn't have been happier. She was fantastic in law school, and she's only gotten better since then. She was always a leader academically in our class, not like one of those guys. We went to night school. We went to nights. So think about that. Any of you that went to night school. You work all day, and then you truck into Suffolk Law. Not the beautiful palace that they have now over on Tremont Street. It was the, shall we say, dusty Sharon over here on Durn Street. But we made it through, hacked through for 4 years of nights, and on we went. To various pursuits, and Sharon into the District Attorney's Office. An incredibly impressive record of being the first assistant for the last several years, head of the Family Services Unit, a leader in domestic violence. Not to tote my own horn, but as you know, and actually today being the 242nd birthday of the United States Army, you an Army veteran, I'll say happy birthday to you.
And the oldest Army veteran in the state of Mass.
Well, you should have come. You could have cut the cake. We had the oldest guy and the young baby soldier. We wouldn't say that. We still are saving a piece for you, Counselor. And my point in bringing that up is my unit and myself, one of the most proud things I've ever done in the military is I was, myself and my colleagues, opened the first women's shelter in the entire country of Afghanistan in 2012. 2012. A story in and of itself, but when I was doing that, I thought of the work of people like Sharon and her colleagues in the District Attorney's Office and throughout law enforcement and public safety here in the Commonwealth when we did that, to provide that little sense of security. But she's done 10 homicides. All due respect, Your Honor, I don't know how many members of the Superior Court bench have tried one homicide. I mean, that it speaks to the level of experience, maturity, and grit that she'll bring to the bench. And so, from my aspect as a law school classmate, as an attorney in practice myself, with a significant practice in criminal law for the last 25 years, and as chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security, where we are, I was just on TV talking about the events in Washington today, where we are charged with the security of this Commonwealth. I think Sharon, as an addition to the bench, would do nothing but add to that security while at the same time bringing that maturity and a true passion for the law that would serve all sides. We've got prosecutors here, we've got defense attorneys here, we've got legislators here. I think this pick is one of the better ones that we're going to do in this administration, if not the best. So that being said, if you don't know, and if she doesn't bring it up, Sharon was the first female Little League player in the United States where they made a movie starring Jodie Foster called Rookie of the Year. That was when she was in the FBI. Called Rookie of the Year. Well, Jodie Foster's gone on to fame and fortune as well, but I'm going to suggest that Sharon Donatelli has contributed more to this world. In all due respect, I think Jodie Foster's a fine actress, but she's also she's not a rookie anymore. She's going to be a tremendous addition to the Superior Court bench. So thank you for taking me out of time.
I just, besides thanking you for your legislative work, I want to thank you for your military service.
Thank you.
I really do. And with 4 children and wife, that's pretty special that you give up your life to do that. And I just want to say that my son was Army, my husband was Marine. So.
I know your husband was Marine. Well, I have to be careful. My son's a midshipman at the Naval Academy too, so I have to be careful. But I can be proud today on the Army birthday as King Counsel of Juvenile. And your son.
Questions? All right. I just have one. What do you want it to be, in marble or bronze?
I think marble is more stately. Like my head.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, the Honorable Jeffrey Locke, the Associate Justice of the Superior Court, and a resident of that very wealthy town.
Thank you, Counselor, and I'm thrilled to be back before you folks. I was here just a few weeks ago, and then immediately after my appearance, I think the name of Ms. Donatelli was put forward, and I was especially delighted, having waited for this nomination for a long period of time. And let me just say that I appear here today as the Jimmy Garoppolo, or perhaps the Jacoby Brissett of the trial court. Sharon's first speaker was to be SJC Associate Justice Frank Gaziano. And then behind that was Chief Justice Paul Dawley of the District Court, both of whom worked with and have known Ms. Donatelli for what, a quarter century or more. Unfortunately, the District Court had its annual educational conference, and both Judge Gaziano and Judge Dawley were committed to that event, are not able to be here, so I am the filler. But I can think of no one I would rather fill in for than those two, and to enthusiastically endorse this nomination, as I know they both do. I have a little bit of exposure to Ms. Donatelli. I first met her when I went down to Plymouth County Superior Court as the Regional Administrative Justice in 2007, and I spent 5 years sitting exclusively in the Brockton Superior Court. Ms. Donatelli was located directly across the street in the DA's office and brought her cases into the Superior Court with some regularity. It's all a way of saying I think I have some baseline to offer some comments on the suitability of Ms. Donatelli for this important position. And I speak to 5 components of suitability. First, she is intimately familiar with the business of the Massachusetts Superior Court. Not only the Superior Court, I suppose the district courts as well, having spent now a quarter century in those courts, first in the district court and then for the past 15 or 20 years prosecuting cases in the Superior Court. I had the opportunity to have Ms. Donatelli before me on a number of trials, and I must say without any reservation, she was, at least in my judgment, the finest trial advocate coming out of the Plymouth DA's office. She knew her facts, she knew the law, and she had a remarkable ability to persuade those before whom she was appearing, whether a judge or a jury. Jury became in some ways putty in her hands, much to the chagrin of her opposing counsel, but all of whom, at least in my knowledge, speak so highly of her as an opposing counsel and as an individual. Secondly, and dovetailing with the first characteristic, second is her extensive experience on the front lines of criminal justice issues. If you look at her resume, you see the years directing a child and family protection unit, dealing with issues relating to the most vulnerable of our society, children, the elderly, and those often living on the margins. And then as chief of the domestic violence unit, as someone involved in supervising child fatality review teams, she has seen the cutting-edge criminal justice issues and has dealt with them directly and hands-on. Third, her commitment to her work, which has been as a trial lawyer and hopefully will be as a judge. In addition to raising her 2 children, she's worked full-time as a prosecutor, and no one came before the court better prepared than Sharon Donatelli. I can give one very brief anecdote. Having had a rape case that Sharon was prosecuting, it came to closing arguments, and the rape involved a young woman waking up and finding a man in her bed and indeed engaged in sexual activity with her. It touched on consent as it related to capacity, someone being asleep or unconscious. And after the closing arguments, I began to give the instructions of law. And I was interrupted. And Councilor Jubenville, you know that doesn't go over well when a judge is giving their instructions. The interruption was by Ms. Donatelli, who said, "Judge, may we approach sidebar?" And as graciously as I could, I said, "Get over here," and gave her one of my noted stares. And she said, "Judge, I think you're about to instruct." And I said, "No, Ms. Donatelli, I'm in the middle of instructing. What do you want?" And as only Sharon could, with great humility, she said, "Well, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I've just received notice that the SJC has issued a decision 30 minutes ago redefining the law of incapacity to consent in rape cases." Now, I don't know how many prosecutors know of changes in the law as they sit in the courtroom, but it demonstrated to me that for Sharon, no rock is unturned, no issue is unresolved. And it was a remarkable and I suspect once in a career moment where the law changes literally as you're putting a case to a jury. And that was just Sharon's level of preparedness and her presentation in a courtroom. Fourth characteristic is she is a leader. She is a teacher. I think we see that by the number of colleagues who she has supervised or worked with. She has been a mentor to many, many lawyers, perhaps in the hundreds by this point in her career. She began her professional career as a school teacher. She's been a professor, instructor at the Boston University School of Medicine, and has been the director of training for the DA's office. And it simply shows that others recognize her skills in teaching and mastering subjects. And finally, the personal characteristics. Sharon's demeanor is one of courtesy, civility, and respect. I see Liam Scully here today. Mr. Scully, I think, first dealt with Ms. Donatelli on opposing sides in a case. The fact that defense lawyers will come in and speak for the way a prosecutor presents themselves and interacts with counsel speaks volumes about someone's courtesy, their civility, and their respect for all. Secondly, Sharon's integrity and judgment are beyond impeachment in any way. Her judgment is evidenced by the fact that with some turmoil in the district attorney's office several years ago, the district attorney turned to Sharon and said, would you step in and try and help me right the ship and steady the personnel? And Sharon, for the last 2 years, has provided the leadership to that office, and the office has restored its good name and its outstanding performance. Sharon has absolute integrity. Finally, she's just a good person. She is a wonderful person, and her warm and engaging personality will suit her on the bench and will be received well by all those who come before her. So I wholeheartedly endorse this nomination. I noticed in preparing these comments that I wrote a letter, I think, to the JNC 2 years ago yesterday. And Sharon has waited for this opportunity, and we have waited for you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Manning.
I have to say, I can't stop smiling every time I see you, Justice Locke, because I was so proud to preside over your hearing. And I have to tell you, in my 18 years, that was my proudest vote, and I have such respect for you. And here's a man that not only was highly qualified, has experience, has a right demeanor, had compassion, and humble. And before he was a judge, I remember the resume, he has helped so many people, lending a helping hand to so many people. So you're a good person, besides being a great judge. And you couldn't have got a better witness to come. And I have no questions. You said it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Judge Locke? Judge, thank you so much.
It's not in here, to be outside.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Judge Locke.
Thank you. We're going to have Attorney Liam Scully speak.
Good afternoon, Councilor Jubenville. Good to see you. Members of the Council. My name is Liam Scully. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I've been practicing law for 20 years now. I started as a law clerk in the Superior Court when I got out of Suffolk Law School at night, the old building that was mentioned earlier. Then I became a public defender, staff attorney with CPCS. I was assigned to the Superior Court in Worcester. And then I went into private practice, and I've been in private practice for the balance of my career. And I came to know Sharon because I live in the South Shore. I have an office in Boston, and I have a second office in the South Shore, sometimes in Brockton. At other times, it's been in Marshfield. And I came to know Sharon as opposing counsel, as Judge Locke mentioned. I didn't know her personally, and I had observed her in the courtroom. And then, sure enough, soon after being there, I started to take court-appointed cases in Brockton Superior Court, and eventually had a number of very difficult, hard cases, challenging cases that Sharon was prosecuting and I was defending. These are cases that involved serious child abuse, they involved rape, they involved murder. They were the type of cases that drew very emotional courtrooms. There would be media pressure. There would be people whose lives were impacted, if not destroyed, in some cases. And it's through that lens that, as opposing counsel, that I learned firsthand about Sharon's, how she practices law and what a great candidate she would be for the Superior Court bench. I came to know Sharon as having the highest level of integrity, professionalism, and decorum. And Judge Locke pointed out 5 factors, and I thought these 3 came to mind for me about Sharon. First, I would start about decorum. What I mean about decorum, and probably anybody who has practiced law with Sharon Donatelli knows that when she comes in a courtroom, she has the ability to take over. And the courtrooms are often supercharged with emotions, with people who are victims on one side, defendants on the other, families of both, all mixed in the most serious cases. And Sharon has a way of coming into a courtroom and, on the one hand, prosecuting the case with an absolute passion for her side, but in a way that is very calming, professional, courteous, respectful of the process, and it tends to infect every case she has, both the ones that I've had and the ones that I've watched her prosecute. And as a practicing lawyer that's in Superior Court nearly every day, you hope that judges can bring that same kind of decorum to every case that you have. And I think Sharon would be fantastic at that. The other thing that came to mind was her professionalism. What I mean by professionalism is a few things. She has a fantastic reputation across the defense bar. My colleagues that I sit with every day, we chat about prosecutors like they chat about defense lawyers. I have never heard a single bad word about Sharon Donatelli. She is praised and admired, respected, and in a nice way feared by all of the defense lawyers who practice in Brockton Superior Court, because when she comes in a case, you know you're in trouble, and that is a fact. I also mean that she is extremely smart on the law, her motions and her trials, and every case that she does is prepared. You're never in some battle, a tedious battle that sometimes can infect criminal practice. She answers the phone, she returns the emails, she produces the discovery, the motions are served ahead of time. And so that's the type of practice that I think would carry over as a judge as well, those same qualities. The last factor that I thought of when I thought about Sharon was her integrity, which I think is also something that Judge Locke made. And I think that is probably the most important thing for any prosecutor to have, and I think with Sharon Donatelli, it is truly her greatest asset. I thought the best way to illustrate that might be to share a quick story about a case that we had that she supervised. She was briefly the prosecutor assigned to the case, I think promoted to first assistant, became the supervisor of the case. It was an extremely difficult case. Counselor Jubenville may remember it received a lot of media attention, as did many of our cases that we did together. But this one was tragic. There was a son, a 20-year-old, who was sort of the black sheep in the family, which resided in Brockton, a legal immigrant family that had made its way to Brockton and resettled from Cape Verde. And he had emerged as a troubled young man in some respects, was the black sheep of the family in some respects. And him and his father were clashing the way fathers and sons do as he was coming of age, clashing and clashing and clashing, police getting involved. Well, on one such clash, he pulled out a paring knife from a kitchen set and stabbed his father right in the head, right in the heart. And his father dropped dead right in the front lawn of his house, surrounded by his family, who all came to his aid. So this is a first-degree murder case that, and it has first-degree murder sort of written all over it in many respects. Sharon stayed very personally involved in the case. The family, the victims, her victims, were devastated. They had lost the father, and now they stared down the possibility of losing what was a beloved son to a life sentence without parole. So it was just a horrible circumstance. We litigated the case for many years, and basically on the brink of trial, Sharon, in my estimation, was the one. She made the call to dismiss the first-degree murder case. That set in. She dismissed that, and that set in a chain of events where, with that off the table, and I know this is somewhat technical, but I waived the jury, which I couldn't do with a first-degree murder case. I had a bench trial where the issue was, is he guilty of murder or manslaughter? Judge Thomas Moriarty presided, found him guilty of manslaughter, sentenced him to 10 years in prison and a long time of probation when he's done. Maybe not a happy ending, but I think it really speaks to how seriously Sharon was engaged in this case with her victims and assessing, the impact that this trial was going to have on the mom, on the brother, on the other brother, and all the siblings that were, that were very involved. And I'll always thank her and be very, very appreciative that she was there. And I knew throughout this case that I don't think she agreed with that move for a very long time. She made it at the last minute, but she kept an open mind and worked very hard, and I will always be thankful. I know that family is very thankful to this day because I'm still in touch with them, I wouldn't be surprised if you were as well. So I think those qualities, and I know there are many, many more, are reasons that I hope this council endorses the nomination of Sharon Donatelli to the Superior Court bench. Honestly, there is not a finer lawyer in Plymouth County that tries cases than her. She's going to be a deep loss to us in the trial settings, but she will make a fantastic Superior Court judge.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Attorney Scott? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Jubenville. Thank you.
Good luck.
So, let me just, I'm not going to read the letters I received, but I'm going to make copies for my fellow councilors. A letter from Supreme Judicial Court Justice Frank Gagliano in support. District Attorney of Plymouth County, Timothy Cruz, and Kevin Reddington, a longtime lawyer in Plymouth County, and Attorney Jack Atwood, another longtime, I think he's close to 40-year lawyer and defense lawyer in Plymouth County. Gene Phillips wrote a letter on your behalf, titled Praising You. Paul Donnelly, the Chief Justice of the District Court, was unable to write a letter today, but said he would be for both the councils. So, anybody else here speaking on behalf of the nominee? Hear nothing. Anybody here speaking against the nominee? Say it again. Anybody here speaking against the nominee? Hearing nothing. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Jubenville. And through you, I'd like to thank you for chairing this hearing today and thank all the members of the Governor's Council, many of whom I had an opportunity to talk to and to meet in the days preceding this hearing. This hearing, which of course is the final and most significant vetting and of my considerations, of my qualifications for this position. And I thank you for your time today and for the privilege of being before you. I'm truly honored and humbled for this enormous opportunity. I'd like to also thank Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito for this nomination. And I'd like to thank Long Povich and Sharon Casey, members of the JNC, and members of the Joint Bar for the consideration that they gave my application. I'd like to thank the witnesses who came to speak on my behalf today. For your kind words and your time, I am so very grateful. I'd like to thank my friends and family who are here today as well. It is a privilege for me to sit here and an honor for me to have you here and witness this incredibly important process and a momentous occasion in my life. My deepest gratitude to my husband, Michael, whose love and support has enabled me to do the work that I love for the last 25 years. To my kids, Emery and Alex, who sacrificed precious time with their mom over the years, suffered through late dinners, chicken nuggets again. They'd be the first to tell you when Mama's on trial, we're all on trial. My gratitude to them for always understanding and making our times together so special. Emery and Alex are not here today. Emery's 21, Alex is 18, and I'm proud to say that Emery is a 2017 graduate of New York University. She is still in Manhattan today and suffered herself through the LSAT on Monday. And Alex, who's 18, just completed his freshman year as a biology major, also at NYU, and he is facing the reality of his first 40-hour-a-week job, working as an intern at a Watertown environmental consulting firm. So Michael and I raised our kids in the town of Sharon. Michael, a lawyer who worked in the corporate world for a while, currently runs a sole practice of law, doing criminal defense work with an office in the town of Stoughton. We've lived in Sharon for 17 years, save the 1 year when Michael's job allowed us the opportunity to move to Galway City, Ireland. A little bit about my background. I'm a proud Hilly, born and raised in the city of Haverhill by Kay and Bill Poole. My paternal grandmother, Elizabeth Kerr, was born and raised in Jamaica Plain. My paternal grandfather, Maynard Poole, grew up in the town of Georgetown. Together, they raised their family in the city of Haverhill. My maternal grandfather, Henry Sharon, whose family came from Canada, owned a bakery in the Lafayette Square area of Haverhill. And my maternal grandmother, whose name was Marge, her family came from the Cape Elizabeth area of Nova Scotia. When my Nana wasn't filling donuts or turnovers at the bakery, she worked in a local shoe shop. She taught me by example that the best way to go through life was to always have a song in your heart and a kind word on your lips. And she was a woman with whom I had a very special relationship that I think about pretty much every day of my life. I'm the oldest of 3 children. I have a brother Michael and a sister Kate, both of whom are raising their families in Haverhill. My mom Kay, now an 85-year-old retired OBGYN nurse, is unable to be here today because she has some knee-related issues. But she was a woman who enjoyed her job, herself a working mom. She loved working with expectant moms and new moms. And despite her long hours and the demands of running a household of 3 children, she always found time on Friday night for her tradition of making us popcorn and root beer floats. My dad, who served in the Navy as a young man, died in 2006. And he worked in the city of Haverhill throughout our life, selling swimming pools at a local lumber yard, and he worked as an assembler at AT&T in North Andover. Make no mistake about it, though, Bill Poole was an outstanding high school athlete who excelled in football and baseball. So it was no surprise that he and my mom instilled in all of us a love of sports. But it was baseball that would afford me one of my earliest and most impactful life experiences. In 1971, as an 11-year-old girl in Haverhill, I broke into a male-dominated sport as reportedly the first girl to ever play Little League Baseball. There were no girls playing organized baseball when the opportunity for me to play center field for the Riverside Bradford Indians came along. After just 2 games, my presence on the field created such a firestorm of opposition among opponents and teammates alike that both the coach and I were ousted. The events became a national news story. It seemed everybody had an opinion that summer that followed. Some saw me as a villain, trying to impose myself in an all-male arena, while others, both male and female, considered me to be a hero. I was called names and ridiculed at times, but when I had the chance to meet with the mayor of Haverhill and got a personal phone call from my congressman inviting me to play on his congressional softball team, but more importantly, telling me about legislation in Congress that would create equal access to sports for girls, I had a sense that, perhaps unwillingly, I had been involved in something pretty special. Through that experience, I learned as a young age that things aren't always fair. But I also learned a lot about perseverance, about not giving up, and I found in myself a quiet confidence. I can do this sort of sense, a fire in my gut and a desire to succeed that I believe has burned in me ever since. I didn't go right to law school from college, but instead taught U.S. history and sociology to high school girls at now closed Girls Catholic High School in Malden. After teaching there for 2 years, the opportunity to work here in this beautiful State House was something that I couldn't pass up. Over the next 5 years, I worked at different times for 2 different legislators and attended Suffolk Law School at night. My experiences as a teacher and as a legislative aide, created a desire in me and laid a groundwork for me to devote my legal career to helping people. It was a desire to help people and to facilitate meaningful intervention, not put people in jail, that led me to the district attorney's office where I've stayed for the last 25 years. Through that experience, I have worked with people suffering from the harm inflicted by others and by themselves. I have met with victims and their families to explain the complicated criminal justice system, the process of trials, testifying, jury deliberation, and appeals. I have held the hands of child victims of sexual abuse and their parents. At times, I have shaken the hands of defendants I've prosecuted and their parents. I have cried alongside the families of homicide victims, and I have been moved to tears at the sight of the broken-hearted families of convicted defendants. I've had the great pleasure of working for 3 different district attorneys during my tenure in Plymouth County. I thank the late William C. O'Malley, who hired me, Michael J. Sullivan, who promoted me to Superior Court, and District Attorney Tim Cruz, who has challenged me over the last 15 years with increasing responsibilities and allowed me to handle some of the most highly sensitive victim cases in Plymouth County. I am extremely grateful to each of them for the opportunities I've had. I began working in the office as a line prosecutor in 1992, and there had an opportunity to specialize in domestic violence prosecutions. I was promoted after 5 years to Superior Court, where I was given the opportunity to be the supervising attorney in the domestic violence unit and to coordinate what I am so very proud to speak of was the first in the state multidisciplinary high-risk domestic violence team. I thereafter had an opportunity to be the chief of the Family Protection Unit for 10 years before taking on the role of the second assistant and the director of legal staff training. In April of 2015, District Attorney Cruz promoted me to be the first ever female assistant district attorney of Plymouth County. There have been challenges over the years to be sure. As any trial attorney will tell you, there are so many variables at play in getting a complex criminal case to trial. Reluctant and recanting witnesses, late witnesses, immunities, witness travels, managing the egos of persnickety expert witnesses, lost evidence, media equipment that you can't figure out how to work while the judge or the jury are looking at you, and yes, even new case law coming down in the middle of your trial. All in a day's work. These are the experiences I've built on and from which I've learned. As I've said to many young attorneys, I have learned something new from every single jury trial that I have done. Maybe it's a new case, maybe it's a new way to put in evidence, maybe a defense attorney has asked a question in a way that I'm going to adopt and put into my toolkit, or maybe it's something about human nature. But it's there if you look for it, and those are the experiences that I've had the pleasure of having over the last 25 years. I've had the good fortune of working alongside so many great colleagues in the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office, many of whom are here today, and many of whom have gone on to the ranks to be the finest judges in the Commonwealth. I've had the privilege to work alongside, learn from, and befriend some of the most talented and honorable defense attorneys in the state. Attorneys who are tasked with representing defendants who are most often not bad people, but people who have made bad choices. And those attorneys accept the critically important responsibility of advocating to ensure that defendants get a fair trial. I've been inspired by judges along the way, both district and superior court, who have keenly balanced the interests of victims, defendants, and public safety, and from whom I've learned that more than anything else, people want to be treated fairly and respectfully and feel that they've had an opportunity to be heard. I've observed judges who, with integrity, patience, courtesy, and respect, set a tone in a courtroom that honors the process and, most importantly, brings out the best in the attorneys and who foster the public trust in our criminal justice system. If I am confirmed, it would be my unyielding goal to do the same. It is a privilege and an honor to be considered by you for appointment to Superior Court. If given the opportunity, I would bring my experience and knowledge of the law, empathy and compassion for people, and devote myself to working hard every day to be fair and thoughtful judge. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Well, you're buying for this job, my 18-year-old daughter who wants to be a vet detective. She got the summer job at Petco. But based on my training, education, and experience as a Superior Court law clerk, someone who was in law enforcement for 30 years, and someone who's been an attorney for over 20 years, I think they're going to make a superb Superior Court judge. I've heard from people like Councilor Jubenville and Kevin Reddington and other people to say how wonderful you are to deal with and fair. So I just want to say
Thank you, Counselor.
thank you for your service to the Commonwealth. Thank you to the service to the good people of the Commonwealth. And thank you for the time you afforded me just yesterday. So it's happened very quickly.
Thank you, sir.
You certainly answered all my questions, and you certainly have my support next week.
Thank you.
I have gone through your application. I have also talked to your link. I would indicate that your home counselor, Councilor Jubenville, has been extremely complimentary and supportive of you, but most importantly of all, your father-in-law speaks very highly of you. At any time you can have an in-law speak highly of you.
Yes.
To me, that's very telling. I know your family of Donatelli's for, well, if I was, no exaggeration, it's got to be at least 13 or 14, when I was 13 or 14, not to give away my age, but you're talking
20 years.
I like that. So I really don't have any questions. We talked at length. I think you're going to make a great judge. You have the kind of background and experience that includes empathy, knowledge, a real ability to deal with the ugliest of humanity and the most victimized of humanity. So to that extent, I salute you for being able to do it for that length of time, and I am certainly going to support you next week.
Thank you, Counselor.
And I also apologize, but I have to get back to Springfield before Christmas. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Good
Thank you
afternoon.
for all the time. I think it was 4 hours.
It was close.
So I know all about your family and all your background, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor.
First of all, people who are, speaking for you, Judge Garziano, and, and Judge Locke, you couldn't get better than that. And Michael Sullivan, I know him very well. I'd like to ask you, we talk about sentence guidelines, and what's your opinion of the sentence guidelines?
Thank you, Counselor. I think the guidelines, when drafted in 1996, were thought to be sort of a framework for prosecutors and defense attorneys and judges to give them some idea of what type of sentence to impose. I personally, as a prosecutor, have never found them to be too helpful to me. I think that I know for certain that they are really just advisory in nature, and to that extent, I think that judges for years before those guidelines were in place would use their own guts and their knowledge of a case and their knowledge of the law and apply a sentence. So I'm not quite sure of their continued utility at this point.
Do you think they're helpful to you?
I think historically, certainly as a new prosecutor, when I did not have what I thought was a good foundation for sentencing, I would use them. But the more experience I've had, the more cases I've tried, the more sense I've had of what I thought was a fair and appropriate sentence, I have not relied on them.
Right. Now you've had 400 cases of alleged child sexual and physical abuse. How do you interview a child that has gone through so much?
Thank you, Counselor. So, So in fact, you're absolutely correct. In Plymouth County, I believe in 2015 and certainly in 2016, we have exceeded 350 to 400 screened-in cases of alleged child abuse. And we have in Plymouth County and in most of the counties now in Massachusetts a children's advocacy center. And there are trained child forensic interviewers who actually go to at least a 40-hour training to learn how to sit down with children and ask non-leading questions in a way to try to elicit from them details and facts and a narrative. And so as a prosecutor, I would be watching others actually conduct that initial interview through a closed-circuit TV.
To me, it's so heartbreaking when I see some of these cases, and I see a woman who has been in drugs, a prostitute, has had 2 children taken away from her, and that's the Bella's
Yes,
mother.
absolutely.
And it's just so heartbreaking to see that, and now she'll walk free probably after that. Sometimes justice isn't justice, I don't think. And I don't know how we know what's going on in the homes because there's so much of that now. Parents aren't parents anymore. It's sad. So tell me now, what would you do in a case like that when you had a case that one person is accusing the boyfriend, not particularly that one, that you killed my child, and I think he's going to say she did. How do you go about veracity of 2 people that really are not the most reliable people?
Well, fair question, and I think I think part of what we do every day is make credibility assessments of people. And, as a prosecutor, and even I know the judge will instruct the jurors that it's their responsibility to determine the credibility of people who are speaking to them. And I think it's a tool that, we begin to develop at a very young age, and we tend to just ask ourselves, what does this person have to gain by the account they're given? What are the circumstances under which the person is making this statement? And I think we make credibility assessments every single day, whether it's listening to a news reporter, we decide do we believe or not believe, whether it's a politician, whether it's a used car salesman. I think we make credibility assessments every day.
Well, we just, in a previous hearing, we're talking about Louise Woodward, and I happen to know about that trial. I'm not a lawyer, but I have a friend of my late husband and myself, a police officer from Newton Police Department, and he got that call that day from Louise Woodward, and it was just a regular call. He didn't know there was a child that was dead or anything. He just got the call to go, and he never went public with what happened when she opened the door, Louise Woodward. He never would talk to a reporter. But when Louise Woodward, on the appeal, she got time served, which I was appalled. That's my own personal opinion. She went back to England and badmouthed our whole justice system, how badly she was treated. Well, she wasn't in a cage. She put on 20 pounds when she was put in place. I mean, when she was taking care of this child, she was going to see Rent every night till 3 in the morning. And we all know as mothers, if you don't have sleep, and the baby doesn't stop crying. So anyway, I don't believe she got up that morning and said, I'm going to kill this baby, but she lost it. And I'll tell you about my friend. He didn't answer reporters until after she did that, and it was well over a year and all that. And he said to me, when I went to the door, she answered, and she was hysterical. I couldn't get him to stop crying. I couldn't get him to cry. I threw him on the bed, and then I brought him into the bathroom. I was going to give him a bath. I threw him on the tile floor, and he hit his head in the tub. She said all this, but it's not documented. It's not recorded, and so it's gone, isn't it? There's no real evidence. So anyway, what bothered me about that, they turned that all around and blamed it on the Ebens. I met them, could cry for them. They were interns, not making a lot of money, and had to pay up to their medical school. And so they were blamed for having an 18-year-old taking care of their child. I was a little over that when I had my first child. The whole thing was so twisted, and that's the thing. When you have a case like that, you have to live with it. You have to, have to resolve it. That's the thing that's hard for you to do, I can imagine. And you must have cases like that. Do you want to say one of the cases that was the most egregious that you lost?
Well, I think there's certainly been cases over the years that I thought were heartbreaking tragedies. And, the thing about, the justice system is either you have the evidence or you don't. And some of those cases, particularly involving children, because there are no witnesses, are sometimes incredibly difficult to prove.
And if they're too young, there's no way they can talk for themselves, like little Bella. Okay, let's talk about, you've had sex abuse cases with teenagers. And, say that a boy, he's never been involved sexually with anyone, and he started going with this girl, and the two of them were going for a while, and he's had sex. And then he's accused of being a sexual perpetrator. Now, does he belong in a sexual register? Is there any way that you can, separate the offense or the age or the circumstances?
Well, I think, it's up to the legislature. I mean, based on the laws that we have right now, we don't have a Romeo and Juliet statute that would allow for underage consensual sexual activity between minors, but it's hard for me to say necessarily without knowing more about that young man.
Just
but
hypothetical.
hypothetically, I guess if he went to trial and he was convicted, depending on what the jury convicted him of, if he was convicted of sexual assault, then he would have to register.
And so for the rest of his life, it would affect all his life.
It depends on, I believe, whether he's a minor or not.
Yeah. Okay, we talked about, I'm very concerned about people with disabilities.
Yes.
I'm not an expert, but I did serve on a commission for disabilities for 22 years. And there's disabilities that you can't see, like Asperger and autism, Klinefelter syndrome, and I talked to you about that.
Yes.
And if you were a judge and you had a person and you knew that was the disability, would you just proceed like this was just a regular person and just indict and go further, or would you take other steps?
Well, I think one of the tools that would be available to the court would be to request a competency hearing to determine whether the defendant is competent.
That's what I wanted to hear. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. That doesn't happen all the time. Okay, I'm going to give you an actual, this really happened, and I want to know, as a judge, what you would do. Young woman is involved in a relationship with a man, and he becomes physically abusive. So much so, she really fears for her life. So she's given 209A, but it's getting worse, and she really feels she's in danger. So she keeps going to court. She went 7, 8 times to the judge. Now, if you were the judge and she came before you, okay, and would you, what actions would you take?
She's coming before me that number of times for...
She's trying to get help. She just doesn't know where to go, and this man, she feels is going to kill her in plain English. Yeah.
I think, again, depending on the court that you're in, we have in Massachusetts now safe plan advocates, and they are trained advocates to assist victims and women who are coming in, men, whoever's coming in application of a restraining order. In addition to helping them, fill out the paperwork and doing sort of that administrative piece of it, they are trained to work with these applicants and provide them with services and speak to them in confidence and try to make referrals and facilitate, actually, opportunities for victims to
And
receive.
how long has that been in effect?
Safe Plan, I want to say, well, in Plymouth County anyway, maybe the last 15 years.
Okay. Well, this happened about 19 years ago,
Okay.
and this was my friend. And she got into this situation, and none of us understood why she was involved. We knew he was a bad guy. He really was. And so when she went to court that 8th time, a police officer went with her to support her and tell the judge, this is a bad guy. She's in danger. Give him a $200,000 bail. Judge gave him $200. He turned to her. She paid it. And you know, the
Yes.
victim is so in fear. She paid it. So the judge said, so my friend, the police officer, said, he was out the door, the boyfriend, before I was. But this is so telling. The judge said to my friend, you're wasting my time, and you're wasting the court's time. She was dead in 2 weeks. He killed her.
Sorry.
So I didn't know governor's counsel. It says counselor on the ballot, and I didn't know. And I didn't know how judges got to judge. I said, I'm going to find out. And I did. And I said, I will make sure that I never vote for someone to be on the bench with someone like him. He got, her murderer got a life sentence. But I think of that, and I think, what is the duty of the court when you have someone like that and she has nowhere else to go? I hope that program is successful.
Yes.
It is.
Mhm.
That's wonderful.
It is.
That's wonderful. Now, you've had first-degree murder cases.
I have.
Can you tell us what the most that stands out in your memory? Whether it was you felt it was fair, the way it turned out, or either way.
Sure. So, ironically, I tried a case in front of Judge Locke that ended up in a first-degree murder conviction. And it was probably one of the cases that has really left an indelible impression on me for a woman who was suffering unknowingly, unknown to her family is what I should say, from a degree of intimidation and manipulation by her husband. And they certainly were on, had come upon some very difficult times with each other. And they had an argument one night, and she attempted to diffuse the situation by going next door and having a cup of tea with her sister-in-law. And while she was there, he called her and he told her to get home. And when she walked, when she got home, she walked upstairs to the second level of the home, which was their bedroom, and he was waiting there for her with a handgun. And he chased her down the stairs and out the door, and he emptied one of the firearms into the back of her as she was running from the back of the home out towards the front. And then, according to the forensic evidence, went back in the house, got a second gun, and then continued to fire shots. And I have to say that was one of the most challenging, emotionally charged cases, because the family, not surprisingly, was completely unaware of the abuse.
When we met, we talked about pedophiles, and you had cases with pedophiles. Okay, I'm going to ask you about, you can relate some of those cases, but I'm going to ask you, in your opinion, can a pedophile be rehabilitated?
Well, I'd like to think that everybody can be rehabilitated, and I think that if there's a conviction, in addition to incarceration, there's an appropriate post-conviction opportunity for good counseling and good intervention, sex offender therapy. I would hope that a person who sexually abuses a child could indeed be rehabilitated.
So you believe it?
I do believe it. I'm not.
You're the first one that ever said that.
Is that right?
You do know. You've seen it?
I'm hopeful. And I guess I'd like to think that, with meaningful intervention, people can change their lives.
You know, the problem is we don't know the pedophiles that are out there, because it's in their private homes. And I had a friend, a couple, firefighter friend of my husband. They adopted 2 boys, 10 and 12. And they were adopted now a year at this point. And at the supper table, the older boy said to his mother, adopted mother, Lisa, that they had visitation rights with the father, with the biological father. The judge gave me out. And he said that the father was raping them in the bathroom when he, all of his life, and now even when he's visiting him. The 10-year-old said, "Don't say that. Daddy said not to tell." So she went to the judge, and I can't even believe this. It took a year and a half for that judge to stop the visitation. That to me is so egregious. I can't even imagine any judge being so heartless to do that. And, I don't think there was any punishment or anything for that man. I really don't. I never heard of anything. But when she called me and told me, I said, I wish I could do something, but I can't. And I said, that is so awful. And I said, I don't have much respect for her. It was a woman judge, too. She retired now. But it just seems like, how many children are like that. And the other boy would tell. So you can see that there's someone who never tell, and they live with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. So what is the most, out of all your cases, what is the most rewarding that you look back on?
Well, I would say truly that's an easy question for me to answer for you. And it was a case that I did in Brockton Superior Court back in, I believe it was 2012 or 2013. And it was a case involving a deputy fire chief for the city of Boston, who was over a period of 7 to 10 years impersonating a state police trooper down in the city and using his firefighter badge and his other firefighter accoutrements that women thought were police officer attire. He would compel women who had a history of prostitution to get into his car, and then he would force oral sex from them. And part of the challenge in that case was that these women, many of them had addiction issues, had criminal history, and when I first met with most of them, they were convinced that the criminal justice system was just not going to help them, and that no one would believe them. And it was a process of litigation over a period of 3.5 years, but we were able to keep all 5 of those victims on board to testify, and they came in and testified, and he was convicted. And so for me, that was one of the most rewarding cases, given that they just didn't necessarily believe that there would be an outcome where people credited what they were saying against a highly esteemed deputy in the fire department.
Tell me, you recommend sentencing when you go before the judge?
Yes.
Okay. My one objection to a nominee going to the Superior Court if they haven't been involved in sentencing, and it's strictly my opinion, but I just feel if you have no experience in sentencing, in recommending sentencing, that when you're a judge, you're timid to give the correct sentence for that crime. Do you agree? You don't have to agree with me, because that's my opinion.
Well, I think with experience in making sentencing recommendations, you become more comfortable.
I'm talking about the first time you're sitting on the bench.
Well, it's an awesome responsibility,
Yeah,
I think, to deprive someone of their liberty.
Yeah.
And I think, not that I've done that, because I'm not a judge, but I have sort of, I guess I have a level of understanding and appreciation for what incarceration does to a defendant and to a defendant's family. I've actually seen the inside of prisons and houses of correction, and so I think that I have a gauge that has comes with the experience that I've had.
Drug addiction, we talked about that, and of course, it affects so many crimes. As far as drug addiction, it was disturbing to me to read that Massachusetts last year was 6th in opioid death in the country. So I don't think that we're doing some things, and they said it's down 6% or something, but I don't know. But I've had 2 friends that found their sons dead from heroin. What do you think about the marijuana law that was passed?
Well, I think, I guess what I would say to that is, as a judge, it would be my obligation to interpret and apply the laws as the legislature has enacted them. And I know that that was, a pretty controversial referendum. And I think that, the legislature and those that have been assigned to develop the regulations are doing what they can to make sure that it's highly regulated and I guess make it as safe and appropriate as possible.
Right. No, I'm just thinking of myself as a mother, and I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, and I worry more about my sons with marijuana, and thank God they didn't go that route. And I'm thinking now, these kids, this generation, can do it. It's not medical, it's recreational. Mm-hmm. Well, that's my opinion, but anyway, I can't change that. So we talk about the specialty courts. You think they're working, the veterans court, the drug courts? You think it works better that way?
I think it's an opportunity for people veterans in particular, who are coming back after just tremendous dedication and service to our country, to have an opportunity for their cases to be handled in a way that's out of the mainstream in these specialty courts where the courts are focusing on what their needs are and perhaps coming up with some type of alternate disposition than would be the ordinary.
Well, they've got to come up with something better because there's not enough drug treatment centers. And, they passed all this legislation, drug addiction and all that. If you don't have any place to send them, where do they go? And women, I think there's only one place. Isn't it only Framingham they can go? And there's only, I think, 3 maybe drug centers. They don't want to go to Billerica. They don't want to go to a prison. And it really bothers me because they're not getting the funding. And we've talked about it here. The judiciary is only getting 1%. No one cares if courts are closing or what's happening, So, I don't know whether a judge lobby could do something about that. I know I talked to Judge Hanson. He's up here talking to them, but it doesn't seem to be increasing the budget at all, So, and what do you do with people with mental issues that come before you as a judge?
I think that's a pretty challenging area of the law, and I think the judges do have the tools for some intervention, whether it's through probation supervision or whether it is through pretrial evaluations, aid in sentencing evaluations if the person is convicted of a crime, to get some insight from specialists as to what an appropriate sentence or type of treatment recommendation would make sense.
But there are people with mental issues that are in solitary confinement. How is that acceptable? It is, it's happening. There was supposed to be legislation that was signed and passed, and yet I'm reading that there still are people with mental issues in solitary confinement. I just don't understand how that works. Let me see. So, how about lobby conferences? Have you been involved in those?
Well, lobby conferences, I would say, are kind of a thing of the past.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I think it's good, but a lot of people think it's a good thing. I don't know. I'm wondering how much discretion judges really have, and do you see legislation in your work that interferes with the discretion of the judge?
Well, I think that to a certain extent, minimum mandatory sentencing certainly does impact a judge's ability to individualize a sentence.
Well, we're trying to appeal that, but what do we do with the others that fell into this, you know? And that was just a feel-good legislation, and they all went along. There was only 4 legislators that voted against it. And so now we're trying to appeal it. And I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak, because there's a lot of people that have been affected. And you even had one judge that didn't follow the rule of law on that, and now they're appealing her decision. So, you know, you have to follow the rule of law, we know that. I don't know how much discretion they have in changing things like the school zones. Can they change that at all, the school zones?
If it's charged as a school zone, I think the judges are, and it's convicted as a school zone, the statute requires that the sentence be imposed from and after the underlying substantive sentence.
They have no discretion in changing it? What's the sentence? What's the sentence for it?
Well, the sentence would be 2 years, and
They can't change that? They can't?
no.
We had someone before us, and he was looking for a patent, 57 years old, and had a lot of health issues through the years. Had cancer, had a leg removed, cancer went through his body. When he was 17, and this is a good kid, not in trouble, not in drugs, never took anything. He was on his way to school when an older 22-year-old friend stopped him. And he said, would you do me a favor? Here's 5 bags of marijuana. Would you sell them? He was gullible, something, but he went into the school. He sold 1 bag. And when he tried to sell a second one, the boy reported him to the principal. They found the other bags in the locker. He went away. I thought in those days it was 5 years, and they changed it to 2. Anyway, he went away. He missed dates, proms, sports, all activities. Maybe he could have got a scholarship. Never went to college. When he got out, he became a custodian in a private school. Now he's coming before us. The private school is closed. Okay, so we voted him a pardon. At 57, where do you go when you don't have that baggage? And it just seems to me that it does interfere. It definitely interferes with the discretion of the judge. Because I can imagine that judge, and I hope, I would think, he or she would have said, boy, I wish I could do something. And he couldn't do anything. And you still can't in a case like that?
Well, I think, I think as a judge, what your options are in that scenario is to appeal to, the prosecutor who's handling the case and ask that prosecutor, if the charge is appropriate, and ask the prosecutor to speak to a supervisor. But given the statutory construction, it would be the judge's obligation, as you said, to apply the law as it's written.
It just seems like, I know this is so silly for me to say, but it just seems like legislators should be making judicial, decisions. It just doesn't seem right to tie their hands, to be able to take each one in an individual basis, because they can't do it, So I'm just very pleased with your resume, with your background, with your experience. And I'll tell you the thing that you said, compassion. And I talked about that, and I told you I just voted against someone, anyone here. She had no compassion. She had someone with Klinefelter that came before her, 18, but he has a mental age of 13. And she was going to indict him over 2 textings with a girl. And a police officer pretended she was the girl and lured him. He came out and they arrested him. She was going to indict him to the Superior Court. killed himself. Only child adopted. That's why I want judges to understand disabilities that you can't see.
I understand.
So I try to pull that out of her, the compassion. Over 3 hours, I called her the next day. I said, it's 3 years now. Looking back, is there anything that you would change? No. I'd still go to the Superior Court. I said, why wouldn't you go to district court? And she knew the Kleinfelders right from the beginning and explained it to the judge and have an evaluation before you made any decision. Oh no, I'll go to Superior Court. And I never did this before. Called her the next day, and I called her the day before I voted, hoping I would get some empathy from her. And I said, tell me, did you ever send a sympathy card or reach out to the parents? She said, no. That was it. I voted no. And I don't find joy in voting no, but I knew I did the right thing. It won't matter. She's going to still be sitting there. But I'm just saying that it is so important that judges find out what these invisible mental issues are, and to take care of that and evaluate what it is before you just do that. But you know, that's entrapment. I don't have to be a lawyer. That was entrapment for that police officer to do that. And he's a gullible kid, 2 textings. They never even met. But I'll get off my soapbox. But I'm very happy that you applied, very happy that you've been appointed, and it was such a pleasure to meet you. And when I first saw you, and I saw this freckle-faced person, I said, why is it all the Irish girls go for the Italian guys, and we Italian girls go for the Irish guys?
That's right. Thank you, Councilor Devaney. Thank you very much.
Councilor Duff.
Thank you. I really don't have many questions. I do want to enter into the record in her file these 2 articles from the Eagle Community.
Oh, thank you, Councilor.
About you. And as somebody who represents Haverhill, I'd like to say my constituency is very, very proud of you. As somebody the same age, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you did. For those of us that were athletes at that age, we will never forget being not allowed and held out. And you know, I remember wanting to, we just weren't allowed.
Right.
And who was the congressman? Was it Bates?
Michael Harrington.
It was Mike Harrington. I thought it was Mike Harrington. I can say I worked on his campaign when I was 11.
You did that.
That's probably one of the reasons why I still see him. Title IX, which is being
Yep.
you know, a little bit challenged still right now, but it did change
Sure
lives
did.
for us.
Sure did.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
You're going to be a fine judge. That experience
Thank you.
of, you know, the unknowing heroine that you became for millions of girls and Americans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Duff.
So what year was that?
1971.
I think that was the start of the downfall.
Not according to these articles, Counselor.
Okay, we'll enter that on the record. Thank you, Councilor. And we will vote on you next week. And I've known you a long time, and always thought you were a first class. And very kind of my job, and she comes out. So I agree. I think you'll make a wonderful judge, and I'm glad you had good witnesses here today. And unfortunately, we couldn't have some of the witnesses because it was such a short schedule on the vote. But they called the council, and Council Carol all called us up. So we will take up your vote next week, and you can record today. You will be adjourned.
Thank you, Councilor Jubenville. Thank you all very much.